The trade deadline is a magical Christmas land, and you're listening to the Six-Man Pod. I am joined by resident Chicago native Cam Koenig. Cam, IU Hoosiers women's team seems to be doing pretty good. Not so sure on the men's team.
Big game against Northwestern tonight. I'm not going to say this is this is a must win, but this is a should win. But they could win. They could use a game here.
Northwestern's one of those Big Ten teams you kind of chalk up as a W almost every time. Trade deadline, like I said, magical Christmas land. No action from the Bulls yet. You think we might see them pull a trigger on Torrey Craig, or go get maybe Buddy Hield from the Pacers, maybe. Or should we be waiting for the buyout market to be set for Chicago?
Zach, I thought Buddy Hield played for the Sacramento Kings. Are you telling me something happened today?
Yeah, there's been a lot. We're going to go through it all, but we're going to go in chronological order. First, trade deadline deal. I don't remember if we covered this on the last episode or not. I don't think we did. I think it was just after recording. Eric Bledsoe. Obviously, the big trade piece here, sent over to the Portland Trailblazers for Robert Covington and Norman Powell. They also get Portland also gets a future second-round pick in Keon Johnson. Cam, I'm not super high on this for Portland, but the Clippers continue to rack up cash, man.
Yeah, I think it was again. This is we'll probably talk about the Portland's overall strategy with their next pick, because I think their next pick after this kind of explained a lot of this pick, or their next move after this explained a lot for this pick. I get it. Bledsoe's a nice, I believe in expiring. Justice Winslow's a decent vet. Obviously, getting rid of Covington and Norman Powell, especially Norman Powell after they signed him to a 5-year deal, is a little weird. I think Norman Powell could have been a nice piece for a Trailblazers rebuild, which is clearly the direction that they're going in. But I get it. The Trailblazers were in a pretty awful, rotten place in terms of cap. So I think this is kind of just one of those moves that unfortunately had to be done for them. And I think that's really what we can mostly chalk it up to. I think Bledsoe, if with Dame continuing to be out for Portland, I think Bledsoe is somebody who can go out and get some points for them, somebody who can go out and lead the line for them here for the rest of the season. Unfortunately, they kind of just have to give up a nice piece of Norman Powell to do it. Like I was saying, this is the first step in what we had been predicting, a lot of the season in a Portland rebuild. Sometimes rebuilds are more painful than others, and I think this is going to be one of the more painful moves for the Trailblazers.
They have a interesting situation here. First things first is, I think Eric Bledsoe has a non-guaranteed deal next year, so they can waive him. He has a $19 million cap hold. They probably won't pay that for a backup point guard, but they have an option there. Josh Hart has 2 non-guaranteed years left on his deal, who they acquire in a later deal. But really, Portland right now really has to look at what their future is, because Dame's 31, Jusuf Nurkic, who's been a part of their core for a while, is 27. And then you look at players like Anthony Simons, who's only 22. Nasir Little, who's only 21, and then of course Keon Johnson's 19. Cam, when I listened to this trade come out, I thought this was a pretty big fleecing by the Clippers. But now that I've really had a chance to see what Portland's doing, I think they may be trying to set up a Dame Lillard, Bradley Beal backcourt combo in the offseason. And no offense to McCollum, but Bradley Beal's by far the better player in that comparison. And they've opened up a lot of cap space here to where, they may not have to bring back Nurkic if they can get a center. If they have a top 5 pick and, Chet Holmgren, like I've said, I'm not super high on, slips like some people are projecting, if they could get him pick 4, pick 5, pick 6, or trade up even with, some of the other assets they have, a Chet Holmgren, Bradley Beal, Damian Lillard with Anthony Simons as your 6th man. That's a pretty strong roster, plus Nasir Little returning from injury, and whatever Keon Johnson brings you. My big thing is my big.
That's very interesting offensively. One, and I know probably the biggest thing that we disagree on is like our Chet Holmgren evaluations. I think this is, like I said, this was we need to clear the books a little bit more aggressively deal. I think, and we'll talk about it here in a second. CJ McCollum was probably leaving regardless. And I think this is the one where it's like, hey, we need to cut a little bit more aggressively here. And, the interim general manager for the Trailblazers, Joe Cronin, said after this deal, after the Norm Powell deal, it's like, hey, this is about cap flexibility. This is an opportunity to clean our books up a little. They view Anthony Simons as a core piece going forward. And he said, hey, we wanted to create a little runway here for him. So it's like, hey, I know that we just signed Norman Powell, but we have Anthony Simons coming up. And, with our cap situation, unfortunately, something's got to give here. I think you're right. I think Jusuf Nurkic is probably next. I don't think Portland's done. I think somebody would probably give them something for Nurkic now, depending on like his value. I don't know, but I think this is the goal here. And going into it, like we're saying, today here on the 8th, the Trailblazers dealt CJ McCollum, Larry Nance for Josh Hart, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, Tomas Satoransky, 2 seconds and a first-round pick. And, with that Pelicans pick, that could potentially be a top, that could still be a lottery pick.
That pick is interesting. So it's top 4 protected.
I think it will translate to a lottery pick. So I think, they have some interesting pieces in Hart. They have another proven scorer that they can put, they can kind of put Hart and Bledsoe in their backcourt for the rest of the season. You have somebody in Nickeil Alexander-Walker who you can take a flyer on. Thomas Satoransky is a really good bench piece for them. And hey, you have another lottery pick. I know that people were thinking at the beginning of the year that CJ McCollum was going to be in the linchpin in like a Ben Simmons deal for Portland, but I think they did pretty well here because I don't necessarily know that CJ McCollum is the piece that New Orleans needed.
Here's the interesting thing, right? A lot of ESPN personalities really did not like this deal. Stephen A. Smith talked about how this was the worst return they could have gotten for CJ McCollum. And obviously Stephen A. Smith knows jack shit about basketball. As we've learned, with his arguments with Kevin Durant, and like all he does is bully the Knicks when the Knicks have kind of revitalized their franchise a little bit. If you actually look into the ESPN Plus articles, they give a C- grade to New Orleans. And my initial thought here was they didn't have a choice. This is one of those deals where they have to go out and get somebody with Brandon Ingram and get somebody with Zion, because otherwise Zion's going to force his way out. He's already been very vocal. His camp's been very vocal about wanting out. It makes me wonder what the, end of this is. But even if Zion doesn't come back, they should make it in as the 9 or 10 seed into the play-in, and maybe they can steal a game. I don't see them getting into the playoffs. That pick is interesting though. It's a top 4 protected pick, so if they were to miss the playoffs and win the lottery odds and get a top 4 pick, then it doesn't convey to Portland. It stays a New Orleans pick that gets I believe it gets all protections removed in the future.
Before you go any further, let me interrupt here. Do we think that's like a potential NBA conspiracy bubbling up in New Orleans? It's like, are we gonna get are the Pelicans gonna get thrown another like top 3 pick to keep Zion for like another 2 years? I'm just throwing that out there. But continue. I just want to plant that seed in your head.
Hey man, that'd be super funny if that ends up happening. But this is not the draft. I would be trying to force a top 4 pick into a team because even the number 1 through 4 prospects, I'm not like overly high on. Unlike this past year or the year before, where there was like these guys who were team changing coming out. So if it's pick 5 through 14, that's when Portland gets it. And then if it's not 5 through 14, I believe it goes all the way over to the Charlotte Hornets because they acquired a lottery protected first round pick from the They acquired a lottery protected first round pick in a deal with the Pelicans for Devontae Graham in the sign and trade. So,
don't you just love NBA trade protections?
Dude, it's so awesome. The best thing about this deal, I think, for the Trailblazers is it gets them under the tax completely. They were about $3 million over going into today. They walk out, I think, a little over $4 million under. And they got what should be a, let's call it an 11th overall pick out of it for CJ McCollum, and then 2 seconds that, who knows what those will be in the future for Larry Nance. And then everything else in here to me is just kind of throw-ins. But, Josh Hart, I think, is interesting to say the least. I don't know if he has a future in, out in Portland or not. And Nickeil Alexander-Walker, I think he's actually going to be pretty good for them. So I'm excited to see what happens here. But overall, the first deal in a vacuum made no sense for Portland. You throw in the second deal, and you kind of see the writing on the wall of no one else is going to take these contracts, especially the Norman Powell one. He had been kind of unproven this year. Everybody's upset. Portland gave up a lot, like Gary Trent Jr. plus stuff to get Norman Powell. But I think people are forgetting that, they went through an entire regime change. Lillard has been hurt pretty much this entire year. He was playing hurt to start the year, in fact. And McCollum, has a COVID issue. He has a kid. And then he also has a punctured lung, part of the way through the season. Portland certainly hits the tank pretty hard this year. Probably going to get a top 6-7 pick. you get pick 6, pick 11 in this draft, your future is looking pretty bright with, Keon Johnson. And then, of course, Dame Lillard's still there. And when Dame Lillard plays, he's a top 10, top 15 player. So I like the direction they went. It doesn't make any sense to me if I'm the Pelicans. And, good job for the Clippers being very opportunistic and getting who they got for what they gave up. Eric Bledsoe has no future in Portland. I could even see him getting bought out, honestly. But at the end of the day, I think one of the big things that we got to look at with, these deals that were made is Portland has damn near $60 million in cap space, and Bradley Beal's shut down for the year in Washington. And while he hasn't said I want out, if I'm Washington, I am really scared right now that Bradley Beal has up and decided to just have season-ending wrist surgery literally just a couple hours after Domantas Sabonis gets traded, which might segue into the next portion of this, which is what I've been clamoring on and on about for the last several weeks, and that is it's time for the Pacers to choose a direction.
Several years, let's be honest with ourselves here.
Yeah.
And I do want to say one thing. Well, we'll save this. But yes, Portland is clearly in the tank. They should get a couple nice picks here. But let's move on, and I will come back to this thought that I have in my head, which again, I think is going to be a juicy one considering the trades that were made today.
Yeah, let's start with the Levert trade. Caris Levert for Ricky Rubio and a protected Cavs pick, which should convey this year, should be somewhere anywhere from 20 to 26 probably. And then 2 future second-round picks. The Pacers also gave up Miami's second-round pick. But one of the second-round picks the Pacers brought in is going to be pick 32, it looks like. So the Pacers basically get 2 first-round picks, which is the value they were looking for Levert. And then the future Jazz pick, which they've already dealt. So I want to start off with the Cleveland side of things for this one. Caris Levert, as we saw on Friday, is a very good scoring guard who's 6'6". And he torched the Bulls for 42 and almost, kind of ruined the Pacers' tank a little bit by damn near pulling out a win against DeRozan and Vucevic when it was literally just Caris Levert and cast, around him. It was interesting to me was, they talked about how this deal was agreed to in principle Thursday on a podcast I was listening to today. It was agreed in principle on Thursday. The Pacers said, hey, we need him for our game against Chicago. We don't know for sure if we'll have enough players. If not, they wait a day. He drops 42 and 6, I believe, against the Bulls. And then they get a second-round pick in the future out of the deal. This trade to me was absurd. I was in the grocery store with my sister, and I did the most hype yell I've done in a long time because Caris Levert doesn't fit on this roster. The Pacers are actually a better team when he doesn't play, and he fits Cleveland's mold so well. He is literally going to be their Jordan Clarkson. Utah Jazz's Jordan Clarkson. He's going to be the Jordan Clarkson of the Cavaliers. They can have a ball-stopping guard on their bench who gets them 20 a game. They don't want to put him in the starting lineup, obviously, and he's going to have exceptional two-man game with Jared Allen. I think that's a very, undersell, big undersell for this deal was the Jared Allen aspect of this. People forget, man, Caris Levert, Dinwiddie, and Jared Allen almost got them a playoff series win in the bubble because Caris Levert and all of them were just balling out for a little bit. And so I look at this as, you have Jared Allen, You need another combo guard. Darius Garland's been really good for you. Let's not move Garland. Let's not move Sexton. Keep those guys for the future. Let's not move Okoro.
I think that's the important thing is that they didn't have to move Colin Sexton.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know the Pacers were trying to get Sexton. They talked about throwing in Justin Holiday, who gets moved later today, in fact. To me, this was a win-win for both teams. I wrote an article on our website about it. You can check it out there. It really was, I gave a B minus grade to the Cavaliers for this. I think they might have slightly overpaid, but again, they have the opportunity to go for it in an Eastern Conference where tonight, I'm pretty sure the best player starting for Brooklyn is 75-year-old Blake Griffin. Okay. The Nets starters tonight is Patty Mills, Bruce Brown, DeAndre Bembry, Kessler Edwards, and Blake Griffin. That's your starting five.
Am I seeing this right, that the Celtics are beating the Nets 28-4 at the moment?
Correct, yes. This is, again, we're here. We're at this part of the season where teams are picking their directions, and I'm glad the Pacers went in this one because today they did it, man. But before we get into this second trade, do you have any notes on the Levert and Cavaliers trade you wanted to add?
No, I think you're right. I think this is a win-win for both sides. Cleveland found themselves maybe a year ahead of schedule. And they are currently fourth in the East right now. And just with how tight the East is with, the top 8 teams all within 5 games of each other, I think this is very important for Cleveland to potentially really stay a top 4 seed. And to be honest with you, I don't know. If I had to pick one team to avoid in the first round of the playoffs, it would be Cleveland. Because it's I think they have a potential to be the most complete team going into the playoffs if they stay hot. Obviously, Miami has really flown under the radar this year. Milwaukee's Milwaukee. If the Bulls get everybody healthy, then that's going to be terrifying. Obviously, Joel Embiid is playing like an MVP this year. Brooklyn is going to be good when they have their big 3. Cleveland, though, legitimately terrifies me.
There are 3 teams. If I'm in the Eastern Conference,
if Chicago, Cleveland is the 4-5, I think I'd be so nervous to watch that game. To watch that series, that would be an all-time series. But I don't know if I could
stomach it.
Have the mental fortitude to watch that series.
There are 3 teams in the East that I think are they are teams that everybody should not want to play. One of them is the 9 seed, the Charlotte Hornets. I'm telling you, you get them in a track meet, they will beat you 9 times out of 10. They're going to win every game 140 to 130, but if you don't have the legs to keep up with them, you're done. We've seen that. They dropped 168 or 158 against the Pacers. They will outrun you, and they'll make your life hell, and congrats LaMelo Ball getting picked as an all-star today as the replacement for Kevin Durant. I think the next team on the list would be Toronto. Toronto's, I think, a center away from winning the East. If they were to say, hey, Pacers, we'll give you 2 first-round picks and we'll throw in the Dragic expiring salary, and, the Pacers say yes, that Toronto team is suddenly just up another tier, I think, because they already have a roster that switches 1 through 5 because everybody except for Fred VanVleet is, 6'7" or taller and can switch. And Fred VanVleet's stocky enough to where he can stop people who get inside. But, I mean, you throw Miles Turner on that team and suddenly they are even crazier. And like you said, Cleveland, they're playing with house money this year. No one expected Cleveland. I'm pretty sure I said Cleveland would be the 11 seed this year, outside looking in the playoffs. Coming into the season, it just shows, that, obviously for the Brooklyn Nets, you make the James Harden deal 10 out of 10 times. You don't get an opportunity to get a top 10 player very often, but it just shows that sometimes having a bunch of B+ players can pay off. And you suddenly slot an A- player onto a roster and throw on some veteran leadership, and you're good to go. And congrats to the Cavs, man. This has been a long time coming, from the Kyrie era where they were literal dog shit. And then, to get LeBron back, win a couple titles, and then be horrible again. When they literally just got a Jared Allen as a throw-in in that deal. Really impressive stuff there. And, they're ahead of schedule, and they're playing with house money. That's not a team anybody should want to face, for sure. But now it's time for the real big one. And that is the deal that happened today. I was taking a sports and PR exam, and I get out of the class, and my phone had, 17 texts, a bunch of tags on Twitter, every Twitter notification ever. The Pacers finessed the Kings today, as you do with the Sacramento Kings, in a deal that sends Domantas Sabonis, Jeremy Lamb and Justin Holiday to the Sacramento Kings. Yeah, and Justin Holiday. To the Kings for Tyreese Halliburton, Buddy Hield, and Tristan Thompson, who will never touch the floor in a Pacers uniform. When I saw this deal, my thoughts were somebody retweeted a fake Woj account, and this didn't happen. There's no way that this is real, because I went into that class.
Pacers giving up 2 Jeremy Lambs? Come on.
Yeah, of course. When I went to that class, I was having lunch with a friend, and I said, yeah, man, I'm about to take a test, and my phone's going to be out for the next hour. This is when all the good stuff's going to happen. And he said, no, don't worry about it. The Pacers aren't going to make any moves till you're able to watch your phone. And sure enough, I walk out of the class, and all hell's broken loose in Pacerland. I want to start with the Kings side of this, because I understand why they did this deal.
Yes, I understand why they did it as well. I just don't agree with it.
This was a bad deal. This is I don't think I can ever give a team a failing grade when they acquire an all-star. And obviously Sabonis is a 2-time all-star. He's averaging close to a triple-double. He is very, very good. But the last several weeks, all the buzz around the Kings has been they are moving De'Aaron Fox, and the Pacers want nothing to do with it. And I thought, that means a deal is not going to get done. And here we are today, and they not only don't move De'Aaron Fox, who I think might eventually be the worst of the two players, they move the cheapest option in this deal in Tyreese Halliburton, and throw in Buddy Hield, who, by all metrics is probably an overpay, but his contract is descending. So while you're paying out $23 million this year, it's only $21 million against the cap next year, 19 the following year. It's hilarious to me. Probably the funniest thing I've ever seen, that Kings Reddit has fallen apart. I gave him a D+.
Sacramento is going to regret this trade.
I gave him a D+ on this deal, because again, you can't get a failing grade when you do acquire a 2-time all-star who's on a cheap contract. Sabonis is $19.3 million this year and then like 20 next year is really reasonable.
Mm-hmm.
But you gave up, I think he's like the 6th highest rated like player in last year's draft right now. Like,
I mean, he was third in rookie of the year. And I agree with you. I don't think Buddy Hield's contract is awful like some people do. Yes, he is going to be a large volume 3-point shooter, but I do think that is a aspect that the Pacers need. And I do think like, hey, if the Pacers, I'm looking into my mirror ball for a second here. If Buddy Hield is your 6th man, and he is shooting, let's say he can shoot 40% from 3, I'll take it. It's a bit of an overpay, but going into next year, I'll take it. Now, and Tyreese Halliburton, probably I think he has the potential to be the Pacers' number 1 option going forward.
Not only that, this is the most talented point guard the Pacers have ever had. They had Mark Jackson, they had Jamal Tinsley, both of which were good, solid players. Malcolm Brogdon has been kind of the next step up from both of those. But the ceiling on Tyreese Halliburton is like it's close to Chris Paul, like probably a better shooting, scoring Chris Paul, like less assists, but better on defense and better at scoring Chris Paul, which is absurd.
Yeah, and this is A+ for the Pacers as far as I'm concerned. Yes, losing Sabonis hurts, but Tyreese Halliburton, Buddy Hield. Let's go. I want to spend time. I want to spend the majority of my time, at least, talking about the Kings here. And this is what I was hinting earlier when I was talking about the Pelicans. I don't understand why both of these teams are going for the 10 seed in the West. Because if you look at it, New Orleans is 21-32. They're in the 10 seed. Portland is 21-33. They're going to fall off. San Antonio is 20-34, so a game and a half behind New Orleans. I don't think they are necessarily going to be going for anything. The Kings are now priced in to going for the 10th seed. Because, unless one of the LA teams drastically falls off, both of them are going to be in the play-in. Only one of New Orleans or Sacramento is going to make the play-in tournament.
Yeah, and that's unless, like, Minnesota, all shit hits the fan. Karl-Anthony Towns gets hurt, Anthony Edwards gets hurt, and D'Angelo Russell stops playing. Like,
yes. I just don't get it. I don't get this deal. And now here's the thing. I do think Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox can be a very good 1-2 punch for Sacramento. The problem is, I don't know if that is a 1-2 punch that is going to really get you in the playoffs. And I'm talking about like looking into next year. And this Kings organization has given no indication ever that they can put a team together. This is a Kings organization. They haven't made the playoffs in 15 years. Okay. And I think at this point it shows you it's like, okay, they view De'Aaron Fox as their number 1 option. They go out and they get Domantas Sabonis as number 2. They think they can probably bring along Davion Mitchell as like their 6th man. And then they think that they can squeeze some sort of value off of Jeremy Lamb and Justin Holiday. It's a win now move for an organization that has never shown that they can win anything. And I just don't get it.
I honestly forgot Jeremy Lamb was in this deal. The Pacers get rid of arguably their worst contract on the team in this deal. So there were already rumors that they were going to have to attach 2 second-round picks to get off Jeremy Lamb's salary. now they get rid of him, and if worse comes to worse, you're saying you basically just swap Jeremy Lamb for Tristan Thompson. You're saving $1.5 million doing that. That is crazy to me. This whole deal, I plugged it into 2K22, which isn't usually the greatest, judgment, things, but it rejects the deal and asks for 2 future first-round picks from the Pacers. Like, the computer rejects the deal and says, I would rather have, I want your players, your package, but I also want 2 future firsts. That's crazy to me that this got done. And, I think me and ESPN were aligned pretty cleanly on this. I gave the Pacers an A to A+ because this is as good of a fleece as it gets, maybe besides getting TJ Warren for $1.2 million, and you also got 4 second-round picks out of it. And then, like I said, it's a D+ for the Kings, D+, D, not even a C-.
I think they are going to need Domantas Sabonis and De'Aaron Fox to just go nuclear.
Okay. If those two can combine for 60 a night.
ESPN was saying it. It's wouldn't they just be better off building around Fox and Halliburton? But I think that it shows it's clearly they view Fox as the better asset as opposed to Halliburton. And this also means they view as having Tyreese Halliburton is actively hurting De'Aaron Fox's development. It's it's at a point they can't play them at the same time. It is what this deal tells me. And it's I hope that Domantas Sabonis does go nuclear. I really like him. He's a great personality. He's a great player. I'm rooting for just give Sacramento a little bit of hope or something. And I just don't think that's going to happen with this deal.
Those two have to combine for probably 60 a game and 60 points and 20 assists a game. And if that happens, then maybe they can catch up to the 10 seed. But, people were New Orleans can catch the Lakers. People need to realize there is 29 games left in the NBA regular season. That means they need to be gaining a game on the Lakers every 4 games.
And don't tell me that the Lakers aren't going to find a way to get somebody on the buyout market either.
Yeah, they're going to add somebody. If by all accounts, Tristan Thompson gets bought out, you don't think the LeBron's going to call him up and say, hey, we won a title together a few years ago. Come play with me. You don't think, Jeremy Lamb gets bought out in Sacramento, LeBron doesn't have his phone number and say, hey, man, we need shooting. Come out here. There's a lot of, buyout candidates, and we'll talk about this, when the buyout market really gets set here in a couple of weeks. But I don't understand this for the Kings. And if they're both competing for that 10 seed, somebody's going to go home heartbroken, and they overpaid to get their heart broken. Maybe
exactly. And to be honest with you, now this probably a lot of it probably depends on Zion coming back healthy. If you look at just looking at between the Kings and the Pelicans, and I'm not sure what the off the top of my head, what the strength of schedule is comparatively. With the Pelicans, a 2-game advantage, I'm probably putting my money on the Pelicans to get that 10 seed.
Yeah, and
and Brandon Ingram can win more games than De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis can.
That'd be an awesome 2-on-2, though, wouldn't it? I think that'd be super cool to watch. Yeah, man. And here's the thing. I know I wrote this in the article that I put on our website, but people need to realize Sabonis and Rashawn Holmes cannot play together because the Pacers have been trying Sabonis with better Rashawn Holmes for the last 3 years, and it hasn't worked. And I love Sabonis because he has an A-plus basketball IQ. And I would say Miles Turner is just a better overall player than Rashawn Holmes and Bagley. So I don't know how they anticipate that working out, but this definitely means like a Bagley deal is going to get made. Rashawn Holmes might get dealt because they can't do what the Pacers did and try to run. I mean, they could because it's the Kings, and like I have no expectations of them knowing how to win. But to me, they cannot go out there with a starting five that has both Sabonis and Holmes trying to play together. Just doesn't make sense. And let's not forget the Kings gave up their two best three-point shooters. That's not nothing. You know, Buddy Hield, I think, shoots close to 40%. Halliburton was hitting 41% of his three-pointers this year. That's not nothing. De'Aaron Fox, I think, is shooting like damn near 31%. Justin Holiday is like 38, 39%. So they get
Justin
a little
Holiday, 37.8. Jeremy Lamb, 33.3, but that's not really his game.
Yeah, man. So if they want to use Jeremy Lamb as an eighth man, but he's like, he can get you 10 points off the bench, you know, that makes sense for him. And if they want to use Justin Holiday as their like actual sixth man, then that's a really good role for him. But overall, I don't like this for the Kings, and I literally cannot believe the Pacers got Halliburton. Like I straight up thought it was a fake trade. When everybody was telling me and tagging me, I was like, somebody got gypped. Like someone out here thought Woj tweeted this out, and in reality, it wasn't. And then of course you read the ESPN articles, you read everything, and it's like, holy hell, this happened. And I really can't believe Sacramento's this dumb, but here we are.
I can believe it.
we gotta conclude on some rumors that are floating around and some things I've heard. First things first would be the Utah Jazz. They are still very actively trying to get some form of depth in exchange for the contract of Joe Ingles. To me, if I'm the Jazz, I look at Indiana and I might say, hey, like we would like to get Miles Turner to throw on our bench or as like a sixth man, you know, because we all know that Rudy Gobert struggles guarding smaller players in the playoffs. You know, can we interest you in a deal where you get maybe we throw you some combination of like Joe Ingles and Jared Butler, or you know, Azubuike, you know, something like that could maybe entice the Pacers, you know, to throw away Miles Turner. But I look at where we're at, and I don't really know what's out there for the Jazz unless they're really willing to make sweeping changes. And they've kind of been stonewalled here a little bit. The Jazz are currently in the 4 seed, but they've been reeling here. I believe they're 4-6 in their last 10. They really haven't been playing very well here recently. I don't know what the solution is. Maybe they try to move like Bojan Bogdanovic to go get something, but there's not a whole lot out there that I'd be super interested in. But what do you think on Utah's front there, Cam?
Utah's probably going to have to stay the course, unfortunately. Like I'm positive that they could get somebody for the I'm sure that they can get somebody for that Joe Ingles expiring. They're probably going to have to include a couple second-round picks, maybe like a really heavily protected first to do it, though. But if they stay the course, like we'll see. I think Utah's gonna, their fortune, I think, is gonna be very matchup dependent in the playoffs. Like, if let's say they stay in the 4 seed and they end up playing Dallas in the 5 seed, well, okay, how is Rudy Gobert going to be able to shut down Porzingis? And then, maybe Donovan Mitchell can kind of go, 50-50 with Doncic and then kind of go from there. But, if Gobert if they play like Denver, then yeah, who knows what's going to happen. Um, so they're probably stuck as is, I would say at the moment, unless somebody really wants that Ingles expiring, but they're gonna have to sweeten the pot for it, in my opinion.
Yeah. So there's a couple more rumors here that I've been really hearing. The next one being the Raptors are still interested in Miles Turner. Apparently, the offer is literally just like the expiring salary of Goran Dragic and 2 first-round picks, one of which would be this season. I don't know if the Pacers move Miles Turner now until the offseason. I think they.
And I don't think they can move him for just that. Like, obviously, I know Sabonis is the better player, but if you look at what they got for Sabonis plus, then you can't just they should be able to get another contributor or at least somebody that they can take a flyer on, plus the first round picks for Miles Turner.
I would think so. And you also look at what they got for Levert. They basically got 2 first-round picks and a future second for Levert and the 55th pick in this year's draft. So I wouldn't take that deal. But that was just one I keep seeing pop up. Another big one that I heard was, of course, the Hornets are still interested in Miles Turner. They're offering Kelly Oubre and PJ Washington and 2 second-round picks. And that was intriguing to me. I am huge on PJ Washington. I think
and I think Oubre is not a bad asset either. I think Oubre is somebody that he's 26, but it's like I think he's somebody that you can definitely include in that new core with like a Tyreese Halliburton and a Chris Duarte and this pick that they have the pick that the top pick that they should have this year, and then PJ Washington has been a really underrated player in Charlotte that could again give them a little bit of some presence down low. He really plays above his height, above his weight down there.
Yeah, I look at it this way. If you could, hypothetically speaking, move Brogdon this offseason, I don't know what his, value would be. And you move Turner and you get Oubre plus Washington plus 2 seconds, which, who knows what they would do with those. You could have a bench where it's like TJ McConnell, Kelly Oubre, and Buddy Hield. And, that's at least interesting. And you add in the fact that, TJ Warren is still in talks to maybe get an extension for a year, 1+1 type thing to stay here. You still have Goga Batadze, which I don't think they're going to move now because of Sabonis getting moved out of town. I think that I would be super big on having PJ Washington here. And yeah, you would like to get a 3, but if you look at the draft and if the Pacers were to luck out and get Paolo Banchero or Jabari Smith or Shaden Sharp or Jaden Ivey, it's like who everybody in Indiana wants to get. To me, you can't look at that negatively. Of course, Johnny Davis is another name I look at from Wisconsin. There's a lot of good names in this draft that kind of slot in that 2-3 area that Chris Duarte fits. And suddenly this, all hell's breaking loose season can get turned around in 1 or 2 years. And yeah, Halliburton might get expensive soon and you're going to have to start paying these players. But what have we learned is that, you can build a young core and you kind of let them grow together. You look at Milwaukee with Chris Middleton, who they got in a trade from Detroit when, he got to kind of reset his career in Milwaukee. And then, of course, they draft Giannis, who obviously nobody knew what he was going to become. But, that's the kind of thing for a small market team like Indiana that they've got to luck out and do. And that's really, I think the next step is like, who's that draft pick going to be that changes their trajectory? Could it be Paulo Banchero slipping down to 4 or 5 and they stag him up and whatever? I'm excited to see the future of that team. But the last rumor is about maybe the most crazy thing I've ever seen.
Yeah,
And
this would absolutely melt Twitter.
dude, I would be so excited. I don't know what I would do with myself.
You would have to call off work just to sit on Twitter for like the next hour.
Hour and a half, 2 hours, like just reading everything. Because, the current situation is James Harden's agent has been quoted saying he will not re-sign in Brooklyn. He has made that clear, but he is not formally requesting a trade. To me, that doesn't make sense. That sounds like I don't want to be here long term. You should trade me. And the place I would like to go long term is where my former GM is, and that would be Philadelphia. Well, there's a player in Philadelphia that hasn't played all season because he is unhappy with the current regime there and the people of Philadelphia. His name is Ben Simmons. He's been to 2 All-NBA teams, and he's like 25. Guess what? You can't do it straight up, and I don't think either team would do it straight up. But one of the things that has been rumored in that we could see a deal in the coming days is James Harden for Ben Simmons, Seth Curry, and some draft assets currently rumored to be 2 heavily protected first-round picks. This would make this a 2-team race for the Eastern Conference, I think, if Ben Simmons is as bought in to being in Brooklyn with Kevin Durant as you would think he would be.
Yeah. To me, if this were to happen, I think this would be like an A for both teams. Because, yes, Brooklyn is protecting themselves off the possibility of not being able to re-sign James Harden. They're getting a very good three-point shooter wing in Seth Curry. They have a couple firsts that are going to be coming their way that they can use to build up the bench. And Philadelphia is going to get a second All-Star that they can pair with Joel Embiid. That they can repair with Joel Embiid, I should say. Like, if I'm both teams and I know that this is like it's high risk, high reward for both teams. But I think the reward is great enough for both teams because I think like this could set both of them up on like a path to the Eastern Conference Finals against each other. Because I do think they would be the best 2 teams in the East if this happened. Now,
and that would reform a big 3 though too, right?
Yeah.
That reforms a big 3 in both scenarios. James Harden joins Tobias Harris, who joins Joel Embiid in Philly, and then Ben Simmons with Kevin Durant with Kyrie in Brooklyn would be massive. I would, if this was called in, I would talk on the phone. I would maybe pour a glass of bourbon, meet up in person, and like chat out logistics in person. But I would take this to the front office now and say, yeah, we're done. Let's do this. Because it gets rid of a disaster in Philly for Philadelphia. And it gets rid of a disaster in Brooklyn. This would be like them absolutely recuperating something off this Harden deal where they would not get a chance to do that this summer because Harden can just outright leave. He does not have to sign his player option. He becomes an unrestricted free agent. And yeah, they would have to sign and trade him, but at that point you can give up a protected second-round pick. It's nuts that 2 foes would do this, but it's the best case scenario for both teams involved.
I agree. I think it's absolutely something that needs to be heavily considered because, again, it would just fix. Obviously, we know about the toxic situation in Philadelphia. We think we know about what could become a very toxic situation in Brooklyn, and it gives a reset. Now, I will say, Ben Simmons and Kyrie Irving playing together at the same time would be interesting because I think Kyrie Irving is basically just going to have to start playing like James Harden because obviously Ben Simmons has his offensive game. Um, so that could be interesting for
You
sure.
know, to me, I think you just trot Ben Simmons out like LaMarcus Aldridge, and you say, "Hey, man, go play making the post. Go get 12 points, 8 rebounds, and 6 assists, and do what LaMarcus Aldridge would be doing for us if he was not a shell of himself."
Yeah, and go guard the other team's best wing.
Yeah, whoever the other team's best player is, he shuts them down. And like, no offense to any Nets fans out there, but that's what the team needs. They're missing a key amount of defense for sure. And Ben Simmons, I mean, they would go from no defense or like only good at post defense with Harden to like what many people say the best defender in the league with Ben Simmons. And then, of course, the other side of this, of course, Philly turning literally a zero on the books right now into a 25 point, 8 rebound, 8 assist guy. That's pretty damn good. And you get to move Tyrese Maxey back to the bench. That's, I think, understated in this. Obviously, the loss of Seth Curry would be huge, but I don't think you can say Seth Curry's kind of a deal breaker. We'll give you Korkmaz instead. Like that, to me, it's not how this works. Like if they want Seth Curry, you should just say, deal, sign me up. I would like James Harden on a plane here tomorrow.
Yeah, I agree. It's I don't think it's going to happen. I think it
And if it
probably
does,
will.
we are going to podcast immediately wherever we're
Yes.
at. I will break Cam out of his job if I have to, because I will skip class, whatever it is, because that would just literally it changes the entire framework of the NBA. Because
Yeah, that completely like we've been talking about how wide open the Eastern Conference is. Not anymore.
yeah, it's a 3 team race because I still think Milwaukee has enough to compete with both of them. But at that point, it's like 1A, 1B, and then 2C is way down here in Milwaukee, where like
Yeah,
if
and
they
then
get
because it's
lucky.
like, and then you can talk about Miami and Chicago and Toronto, or I'm sorry, and Cleveland as much as you want, but like we know how much the Bulls struggle against Philadelphia. Um, the Bulls do not have the defense to guard James or to guard Harden and Embiid. Cleveland does not have the firepower. Miami, Miami again is probably the would probably be number 4, and then you talk about like you can order Chicago and Cleveland and Toronto however you want, but it's like that deal would completely reset the Eastern Conference.
Correct, and I think I don't think it's any secret. Obviously they've been trying to move Tobias Harris, but Tobias Harris with a guard who can play make like James Harden is a difference maker. He's still a very good player. Yeah, he's close to 30, if not he is 30, but that's still a player who can go out and get you points every night and defend well on the wing. Cam, I want to thank you for joining me in this emergency-ish episode. We didn't do it immediately, but it was kind of in the books here. And we will be doing a
Another
NCAA.
trade that if there are any trades that come tomorrow, we will, if there are any big trades that come tomorrow, I'm sure we will get on Thursday and kind of wrap up the trade deadline.
Yeah, the deadline's
Uh,
Thursday at 2:30. So we'll probably do like a final episode on Thursday, and then At some point, we'll be coming out with the big NCAA primer of just me and Cam spitballing college basketball for maybe 3 hours. Who knows?
We could go. I mean,
there's a lot of mid-majors that don't get enough love, Cam. We could go forever.
Absolutely.
But as always, thanks for listening wherever you're listening. If you have found us on Spotify, you want to follow us on YouTube where you can see our wonderful mugs or the background at IUPUI.
Wonderful is a strong word.
Well, at least one of us. We'll let you decide that at home.
Follow us. We need to get Mark back on if that's the case.
Follow us on Twitter, twitter.com/the6manpod. Gonna have a new logo, gonna have new tags and everything soon because, we got to rebrand every once in a while. We want to make sure it's consistent across the board.
This new logo is fire, by the way.
Yeah, I did work with a logo specialist today at work, so I'm pretty pleased with it. But once we get it all wrapped up, you'll see it. And Cam and I will be bringing you another episode Thursday. And, KJ Pruitt did talk to me today. He started his rehab at IUPUI today. And if you are an IUPUI student and you're looking to play some extracurricular basketball, the IUPUI men's basketball team needs you. 358th out of 358 teams on Ken Palm's rankings. They cannot field a team, man. Everybody's hurt. I was talking to KJ about it today. They have 5 active players right now. They would be forced to.
Kidding me.
They'd be forced to forfeit their next several games. They can't cut anybody. So it's not.
What happened? Like, what the fuck?
So KJ's out for the year. Bakari Lestrap got hurt. He has a blown disc in his back, I think is what I read.
Fuck.
Just like everybody's been getting hurt or has COVID. And I guess the coach has lost the locker room. But I'm going to do a one-on-one with him at some point to really find out the true nitty-gritty of what's going on there in that locker room. Because
are they going to be able to play this game against IPFW on Thursday?
I doubt it. I doubt it.
Man, that's close. I wonder if I have any eligibility left.
I know for a fact that I don't, because once you start betting on college basketball, you lose it, according to what I don't
have any eligibility.
what was what I read, so I've definitely blown my eligibility. But Cam, thanks so much for joining me as always. Thanks for listening wherever you might be. You're listening to the 6-Man Pod, and we'll bring you more content later this week. Cheers and have a wonderful night.